So I am here with Adam Nickerson. He has made it seems like a bunch of games, but he's kind of in the limelight right now because he's made a very addictive little time waster. I don't know if you take offense to that, but man, I
Not at
love this
all.
game. It just is sucking up all of my time. My wife is playing it, my son is playing it, and why don't you tell people the elevator pitch for Ding Dong XL?
Well, everyone has a few minutes in their life, and Ding Dong XL is perfect for that. It's just a simple game, one button game, where you move your ball from the top to the bottom of the screen, back and forth, get a point every time, and just avoid everything except for power ups and try and survive as long as you can.
Fair enough. You've been making games for a while now. Actually, you really started. What was your first game that you ever made?
Do you really want to know
I
that?
do, sure.
So, the first game I made, it's no longer available. I had to tidy up my image. Uh,
Oh boy.
the the first game I made, I kid you not, was based on a dream I had where I had made this game in a dream, and that's where the name came from. I dreamt it, and then within a week, I learned to kind of tinker with Unity and use like a framework, and I released a endless runner called Fallopian Frenzy, where
Okay.
you are a sperm and you are just going and avoiding condoms and IUDs and
Oh my god. Kind of like Flappy Bird.
yeah.
That's very funny. How did it do?
It in about 3 months it was just a free to play game with ads, had about 15 to 20,000 downloads, and so I got the bug immediately. I was like, oh man, you know what? There might be something here.
That's awesome. So after Fallopian Frenzy, I love alliteration, by the way. I'm a huge fan of that. So the name of it is like that's a plus in my book. And maybe in some years down the road, it'll be used in a health class or something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well,
Um,
it did have sex tips at the end of it.
oh boy. All
I
right
made
then.
I made sure to make it, at least educational.
That's I don't think kids need any help in that department. They so what was next after that?
After that, I made a couple kind of puzzle-ish games called Rabble. It was about like shape matching, and then I really got into the alliteration with Bing Bong. Was probably the first game that really took off. I think it got like 200,000 downloads, and it was just a free to play. I didn't put any ads in it or anything.
Did that surprise
Um,
you?
it really did. Just because it was a very straightforward game. Same idea, like Ding Dong is almost like a future iteration of Bing Bong, and I sound ridiculous saying all the game names of my games are incredibly stupid. But similar idea, and I made it in a series of three minimalist games, and people seem to quite enjoy them, and suddenly I realized, hey, you know what? Maybe if I just keep making them as I go, uh, people will keep downloading them.
Is that the three games? Are those the XL series? Because I notice a lot of your games have XL at the end.
Yeah, so the XL stemmed from actually when I really the this one here, Bit Blaster XL, was my first Steam game,
Hmm.
and it was kind of a test. Whereas I had Bit Blaster on mobile, it was probably like my seventh game or something. And I spoke to someone I knew at Valve back from my internet cafe days. I was like, propose, what do you think about these small games on Steam? Because this was right before Steam Direct happened and Greenlight was kind of in its mid-level phase about 3 years ago or no, so now. And he's like, hey, what the hell? Let's try it. Let's see what happens, right? What's the worst? He's like, as long as you kind of make it palatable to the same audience that would be using Steam, So the XL stemmed from kind of an extra large version of the game where
Okay.
I just added all the kind of desktop features that you would typically expect, like resolutions, custom controls, and various little things that don't seem like a big deal to normal games, but going from mobile to desktop, just kind of quality of life stuff.
So going from mobile to desktop, would you say that that is easier or more difficult than going from desktop to console?
Uh, well, I guess it really stems or comes down to where I was at in learning. Uh, I actually at one point was working on something for Xbox, and it just didn't work out because I couldn't. I'm self-taught, so I couldn't wrap my head around some of the logic that's required. It's like I imagine something I would have just learned, say, had I gone to school for it or something.
Oh,
But I'm
okay.
seeing this chunk of code where I just can't understand it, and then it becomes a time frame thing. Well, is this worth my time to figure this out now, or do I move on to another thing? Whereas with the Nintendo Switch, believe it or not, it was an absolute breeze, and they were very helpful, and uh, it was much easier than say putting a game on iOS.
Really? That
Yeah.
surprises me just because like there's such a breadth of stuff out there on iOS. You
hmm
would think that I mean, I know Nintendo has kind of opened the floodgates, but that's almost the opposite of what I would have expected to hear.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to Nintendo's just uh in a lot of people's eyes modernizing a lot of things, and kind of they're making sure that it's easier for people to play more games. And it doesn't mean necessarily that it's as easy to get your game on Nintendo
Hmm.
as iOS, but to develop for it,
Oh, okay.
I felt a lot more support in, say, the back end than reaching out to an unknown entity that isn't going to talk back to you when it comes to Apple or Google, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand what you mean now. So, I mean, it must have been like kind of like a dream come true to get. I know that your history with Nintendo is pretty extensive, all the way
Yeah.
from back when you were a little kid. I saw your thread on Twitter, which is actually the whole reason that I reached out to you is because I was like, oh wow, this guy really likes Nintendo, and I've got a Nintendo show. I should talk to him. So. Why don't you tell people a little bit about your history with Nintendo, and it'll probably convince some people to check out your game if they haven't already.
All right. Well, I honestly, as far back as I can remember, I just I was crazy about video games. Mario just it like blew my mind to another level. I didn't quite understand exactly what was going on when I was playing all my old NES games.
Hmm.
Um, Mario obviously was simple enough that I could grasp the concept, but I had all sorts of other games that, like, I remember playing Maniac Mansion for God knows how long, or A Boy and His Blob, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Um,
Just to be fair, nobody knew what the hell they were doing with a boy and his blob. That game was impenetrable.
yeah, you need pen and paper for that one.
Uh huh.
Um, but I just had a love for it, and it didn't necessarily seem to be a thing. I had a good friend who lived across the street from me. Me and him were crazy about video games, and no one else seemed to be. Anytime we talked about it, we were kind of dorks. Um, and then I kind of wrapped myself in it with, a subscription to Nintendo Power. I wrote a speech about it for my school class and had to perform it in front of the school in grade 5, which is just ridiculous. And reading that now is even more absurd, considering I don't know how I found all those facts, because I'm pretty old now, and that was before we had the internet. I don't know where I was discovering these things about Nintendo. Some people say books. I'm not convinced.
That's too funny. So, what was it like when like you're in talks with Nintendo and they said, "Okay, you can put your game on our system." Did you like what was your reaction?
Well, it all kind of started when some people from over at Kinda Funny and IGN were like tweeting scores at each other and about Ding Dong XL and trying to beat each other's scores. And then suddenly Greg Miller speaks out and pinged a couple people at Nintendo and said, "We need to get this game on the Switch. It's perfect for
Oh, that's
Switch."
awesome.
And then suddenly in my DMs, Kirk Scott, the Nindies guy, was there saying, "Hey, are you interested in putting your game on Nintendo?" And then this office is pretty small, but I probably did 15 laps around it, and then I responded to him. Otherwise, if I had responded with the energy I had at that point, I don't know what would have happened. But
You- Go ahead.
it was pretty amazing.
You probably would have said, "Oh yeah, I also you mean fallopian frenzy? Is
Yeah.
that the one you're talking about?"
Yeah.
That's too funny. That's an amazing story. The fact that they came to you, man, like the people who like you must have been. Oh my God, thank you so much to the people who reached out, like
Yeah.
on your behalf. That's amazing.
Well, I did have the pleasure of this happened about a month before GDC this year. So I went to my first GDC, and which is, by the way, crazy expensive. I don't know why. Like, game developers aren't rich. What are they doing? It's crazy expensive. And so I had to pay through the nose for this thing just to go down there, but it was definitely worth it to be able to meet these people, meet other developers, uh, but especially the folks over at IGN and Kinda Funny and Jared Petty. And like, even better was I got to meet Kirk Scott when I was down there, and me and Kirk from Nintendo had great discussions about all sorts of things. And he was just, I walked around the show floor with him a bit, and seeing the way he interacts, and he just knows all these indie games and all these indie developers, and it's just kind of a breath of fresh air seeing someone who has that ability to get these games on Nintendo. He has such a vast knowledge of all the people and the games that are actually being played and what people really want. And so why it just kind of makes sense when there's a demand for a thing that there they are reaching out saying, "Hey, we'd like to have you too," because it doesn't hurt to have more.
Right. Well, that's pretty antithetical to what Nintendo was like before,
Yes.
though. So I think that that's pretty awesome. So Kirk Scott reached out to you, and how much time passed until you released the game?
So that would have probably only been a couple months here.
Wow.
I really like.
Wait, so
I
GDC
I was
this year?
excited. Oh yeah, this year.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Yeah, because
yeah.
that was no time at all ago.
So Ding Dong XL, my first iteration of it, released June on Steam last year. And I released it when I came back from E3 last year. I just go to E3 because I just love. It's a childhood dream getting to go to E3 and just kind of wander around. But uh, I released it as kind of a test project on Steam. I love the numbers behind everything, and I didn't tell anyone that I was releasing it, and just to kind of watch what a organic exposure on Steam would do, uh, because everyone was saying that you can't do that on Steam anymore. Um,
You
but
mean
anyway,
launch
so
without hype?
yes,
Okay.
exactly. I just wanted to see what, based on my other games, if they pushed organic exposure to it, and so it did fairly well. And I started working on another game that I have not talked about yet, and was fretting over that up to about Christmas, not destroying it, remaking it, destroying it, remaking it, and I'm just not happy. I like my games to kind of be perfectly small and tight, and it just hasn't gotten there yet. So I decided to release Ding Dong on mobile. I just decided, why not toss it back to mobile, the XL version, and that was January. It released to mobile. By the mid of February was when the kind of frenzy started around it, and I was suddenly getting downloads, going from probably 10 downloads on iOS to 20,000 plus in a week.
Wow.
And then March, yeah, March was GDC, and here we are.
That's a pretty amazing story. So, I obviously you can't talk about your other. I mean, unless you want to unveil it right here, but I doubt it. What other games have you made for that you are considering porting to the Switch?
Well, I have quite a few that I've considered. I get a lot of emails from people saying, "Hey, you should bring this one, or you should bring Bit Blaster," or which is funny because I've pitched Bit Blaster in the past to multiple consoles and it's been turned down, but now there's a renewed interest, so it's kind of interesting that way. But uh, it's it's different because I want to make something. I don't want to just rehash it. Like let's say if I do release Bit Blaster, now's the perfect time for me to kind of re-look at it and say, hey, I can improve these aspects of it. I don't know, make it run a little better, look a little better. Uh, but at the same time, I have some sequels to different games that people liked in the works too, and got to make that decision somewhere. It's like, which one am I gonna do?
That's fair. Um, what's your high score? You were talking about scores earlier. I'm currently like my Discord channel is doing like a tournament for a $5 eShop card on for your
Yeah,
game to see who can get the highest score by next week or something. I'm
nice.
curious, what's your highest score?
Um, so I think I have a pretty high score, but it's been put to shame by everyone else who plays the game now too.
Hmm.
So I got up to 181 if I remember correctly,
Wow.
which I think is pretty damn high. But there are a couple like on Steam. I think Jared Petty probably still has the number one spot, and it was I think 302.
Holy cow, I can't even imagine that. Like my high score was 60 and I was like, "Honey, come look. Come look." I was so happy.
Well, he says like that's at a point where I was balancing up to 250 when I was doing it, and like using like I'm writing my own custom code to make sure that I can see that it works up to that point. I never would have assumed someone would be cracking 300, but I guess at some point someone's gonna do it, and that's how it works.
I think the internet always surprises developers. Like, think of an MMO or something, World of Warcraft. They're like, okay, we've got all this
Yeah,
content. People aren't going to finish this for a couple of months. By then, we'll have our next patch out, and then the next week, they're all like the crazy people are like, okay, we're all done. Where's the
yeah.
more stuff? And they're just like, are you kidding me? How?
Yeah, no, myself as a player of games
Mhm.
have specifically been a part of things similar to that, where you're just like expecting more already, but they can only provide us so much.
Well, speaking of expecting more, are we going to expect any like other like little icons or stuff from your game? The little ball that bounces between. By the way, a funny
Yeah.
story. I am a bald guy with a beard and
Oh yeah.
glasses, and like my little
Perfect.
my logo is for Run Jump Stomp is this little guy with yellow in his glasses and yellow stuff coming around him. And I was looking through the characters in the game, and I was like, "What the hell? That's me!" And I was quickly corrected, but I thought that was really cool. Are you going to be adding any more of those later on?
Well, it's funny. There's actually one in there that no one's found yet.
Wait, how do you do that? Oh, obviously you can't tell me. Oh man, is it
I
me?
could be anything. But it's yeah, I'm surprised. As we talk about, people find these things, and so far, hey, maybe it's too random or it's too obscure, but I think someone will find it eventually.
That's
And
too interesting.
yeah, it's I figured why not. But I do have a couple other things first off, I just have a fix coming out hopefully very soon. I'm not. I gotta, learn the process of the patching behind the scenes. But
Hmm.
I have a fix coming out for one small bug, and then a couple little changes. And I've added Japanese translation and Korean translations. Um, so that'll be coming out very soon. And I've been working on for the Switch version, getting the online leaderboards working. But as I
Oh,
said,
okay.
it's like it's all I learn as I go. So I'm looking at these scripts that people who know what they're doing have written, and I'm trying to understand how to operate APIs and things like that. And I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, look, guys, if there's anybody out there who can like is worried about you can't make your own game, this guy taught himself. He figured it all out on his own. Any chance of Nintendo characters being a little ball going between, or is that something that
Well, see, I said something of the sort to Kirk,
uh
but I think I would be buried in time if I were to attempt to try and figure out the complicated trademarks and copyrights of Nintendo and squeeze in between. So I just skirted the line by putting Kirk Scott in it,
oh,
just as
okay.
a kind of shout out for him being so helpful and really helping actually dramatically change the Nintendo indie scene.
So I noticed on your little Twitter thread there that you work out of your house. Do you have
Yep.
a hard time stopping work?
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh, I'm what people call a workaholic, and kind of always have been. I've owned my own businesses since I was 21, and I owned and ran an internet cafe, and then I ran an IT business, and now I'm doing games, and so I my brain doesn't turn off when it comes to a lot of those things, and it can be a struggle at times, but it's just a matter of knowing and trying to teach yourself, even after all these years. Uh, this is my office here. When I'm in here, I should be working. When I'm the rest of my life is outside these doors, and you know try not to think about it. My key is list making. If I start thinking of things outside of my uh, work time, I write it down. If you write it down and you make these lists, you keep it out of your head and you can analyze it the next morning when you're back in your office.
What's at the top of the list right now?
Well, there's a million lists. Uh, there's one right now.
Buy milk.
Well, the two that are at the top are how has nobody found the secret,
It's killing me.
and uh, the other one is someone pointed out to me that while there's a couple men in the game, I don't have a little woman
Oh.
emoticon, and while as embarrassing it is, I hadn't considered that because I actually have a personal connection with the people that I put in the game.
Hmm.
I've been kind of racking my brain over what I could do just to even that out or add a woman to the game because not like it matters because it's such a silly little thing in a silly little game, but it just my girlfriend pointed out to me that why not? It'd be nice.
You know what? She's got a good point, and it
Yep.
seems like you've got your work cut out for you. What are you excited for?
uh, I'm excited to see everything about the future of the Switch and what I can do with that platform. I would love to bring more small games to the platform because I see it as a underserved market, and I also see that people there's a couple instances of people where they bring a game to the Switch and they think that automatically makes it worth $20 when it isn't necessarily. Um,
Yeah, a lot of
and
your games are
so
really cheap. Well,
yeah, I
inexpensive, I think should be a better word to use.
yeah, either way, a lot of people are worried to offend when they say that, but in all honesty, like that they could be a budget title, they could be cheap. I'm just happy that people can play the games. Um, and that's why I've had no problem giving out a bundle of keys. I'm allotted a certain amount, and everyone should play games. And I think my games are fun, and if others do too, that's just a bonus.
I totally agree that your games are fun. So, thank you
Thanks.
so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, Adam.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's bizarre being asked to do something like this, but I'm more than thrilled.
Well, thanks very much. And where can people find all of your stuff?
The best places usually are, you can find me on Twitter at Nickervision, or nickervision.com, or Discord. Uh, I have a Discord I run. It's not massive yet, but it's got a section to talk about each of the games. And I don't know, how do you get to it on Discord? I guess it's
I think it'd
just,
be discord.gg/ a bunch of ridiculous things.
actually, you're right. It's discord.gg/Nickervision.
Oh, oh,
I
it
did
must,
get a
you got a
vanity one.
verified thing. Okay, that's
Yep,
nice. Very, very cool. All right. So discord.gg/Nickervision.
that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.